Next Saturday, the Rolex Sports Car Series heads to Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. The field is packed with hungry drivers, and the cars are tightly tuned for a race that never fails to bring the drama. The Rolex Sports Car Series from Mid-Ohio next Saturday night, 8 Eastern, only on Speed. Welcome back, everybody. It's great to have you with us for Speed's continuing live coverage of the 75th running of this legendary event, the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. Greg Kramer and Calvin Fish up here in the booth. Pit side, Brian Till and Andrew Marriott. We are now just under 9 hours remaining in this legendary race and just over 2,000 miles completed. 236 laps officially in the books, working 2:37. And Allan McNish, while we were in break, brought the leading #2 Audi R10 TDI diesel into the pits, tires and fuel only, and I believe that sets him up for his 4th consecutive stint running quads for the drivers, doubles for the tires, and McNish back out with nary a hiccup, looking very strong indeed.
He really is, and I think he's on a quadruple stint with this last one that he's putting in. He didn't take tires there, wasn't around when he jumped in the car at the beginning of the stint, but I'd assume just the way they've been doing their routine that Allan is on the 4th run in the car, and we'd expect him to jump out. I think it'll be Capello next up in the rotation. So the #2 car looking awfully strong. We're looking at one of the Pescarolos there. It's number 16, currently driven by Manu Collard. He's had a 2nd place finish here overall. He's also won in the GT2 class before, so he'd love to get that thing onto the podium, but he's got 3 diesels ahead of him, so it's going to be a tough road for him to make that next step.
Yeah, the car has really run, I mean, pretty much faultlessly and very quickly, just not on the pace of those diesels, and that, of course, is where Mr. Pescarolo's concerns are, but they are giving that car a great ride.
They certainly are, and I mean, it's kind of difficult with the strategy. You can only go as fast physically as the car will go, but how hard do you push? Do you try and get those last second or two, hoping that maybe one of the cars in front of you has a delay in the pit lane and you're able to capitalize, or do you just settle in and hope that it breaks? So it's really pretty much a cat and mouse game as we get to the point where just under 9 hours to go in this 24-hour event.
7th overall at this point is the lead car in GT1. That is the Aston Martin. Thomas Enge currently behind the wheel, the 007, 009 team car, and the 63 of O'Connell finds yourself 3rd in the GT1 category. LMP2 leader is 13th overall, the number 31 Binney Motorsports Lola. Bill Binney behind the wheel right now. And your GT2 leader resides in 16th overall, number 97. It is Jamie Melo right now in the Risi Ferrari. So they're your leaders in those 4 classes. Let's take you back and show you what's unfolded since the race started in the very first hour. At the start, on the right of your screen, Sebastian Bourdais in the Peugeot, Dindo Capello in the Audi, and Bourdais wanted to lead bad at the very start, and wanted to lead a little too much.
He said he didn't realize Capello was going to be that close. He took a slightly narrow, shallower entry to that first turn, got wide, got on the dirty part of the racetrack, and did a good job actually of saving it, not getting into the gravel trap. There we see him recovering, coming back through the field.
Then the number 32 at Brazzi Epsilon, Zytek, had a quick loop, and a little bit later on ended up in the garage for a repair. They have been in and out. The number 99, Risi Krone Racing Ferrari, locked up, slid off course. Then the team car, the number 97, the window popped out. How do you fix that? You just replace the door much quicker than anything else at this point. That was all in the first hour. Then in the second hour, we saw Tom Christensen have a mow.
Well, it just started to get a little bit damp. Tom came into that first chicane and just tried to keep it together, and just a few moments later, a little bit further around the corner at Tête Rouge, Mike Rockenfeller, the young gun, huge crash in the Audi.
And the number 64 Corvette, Ollie Gavin behind the wheel, had a problem, broken input shaft, was able to get it moving on the starter motor, but the race engine wasn't running. That's not allowed. Then the rains came, and they came in torrents and certainly caught out a few more cars. That is the car that was on pole in P2, team car to the number 32 entry, had a spin. In the 4th hour, things started to dry out a bit, but the action was still pretty intense as the Luc Alphand Adventures Corvette getting into the Converse Benex Ferrari 550. Then the Charouz Racing Systems, number 15, a fire in the pits. Stefan Muka got out of the car, jumped right back in it, and they just watered him down. But they, the officials said, no, we want you to get out and get over to medical. He has been back in the car. Then the Peugeot, first problem that we saw, Cal, smoke from that right rear corner.
Seems to be a bit of an Achilles heel with this chassis right now. Something in the rear uprights is failing. We saw in qualifying, saw it again today.
In the 7th hour, this was the moment that could have been, that fortunately wasn't too bad, as Werner got into the side of the 63 Corvette Magnussen. Werner lost some bodywork, but Magnussen had just absolutely escaped through the gravel track, hung on to it, never really lifted, no damage, amazingly, to the vet, and not a lot of damage to Werner's car, the number 2. They had to go in, change the rear deck, otherwise those Audis pretty sturdy, and it was able to continue. And from that point on, through the night, fortunately, because I think primarily because we didn't have rain, not a lot of major developments in terms of incident.
It's been pretty routine since that time. I mean, that could have been a huge one. I mean, Marco got away with just the bodywork being slightly dislodged. If he'd taken a bigger hit there as you're loaded and turning through that corner, it's about 175 miles an hour approach to that first chicane, so that could have been very, very nasty indeed. And Max got lucky as well. Quick trip through the gravel trap. And when he rejoined, which we didn't see in that replay, very close to actually collecting Werner again. Yeah. And also the Kurosawa Ferrari, one of the leading cars in the GT2 category. So they got away with one, dodged a bullet there, because that was just a short while after we saw Ollie Gavin and the other Corvette go out. So when you've only got one bullet left, you don't want to use it up. And Magnussen was able to keep it together after that rodeo ride through the gravel trap.
Just been watching the number 97 Ferrari from Risi Competizione. Jamie Melo behind the wheel, leading in the GT2 category, 16th overall, and 3 laps in hand over the Écurie Écosse Scottish Ferrari entered team, and Andrew Kirkaldy, the young British GT champion who has made the step to FIA GT and now to LeMans for the 2nd consecutive year, showing tremendous speed, sitting in the 2nd spot in the GT2 category. We saw a very quick shot, by the way, of a red car behind a barrier. That was the number 20 Pilbeam from Pierre Bruno Racing, and that car looked like it is parked for a while. And the 009 has made its way down in the pits. Darren Turner brings it in, 2nd in the GT1 category, 8th overall. And once again, looks like maybe just a drinks bottle. Change up, tires, fuel.
Should be about 28 to 30 seconds to get these 90 liters of fuel in, just over 23 gallons being put in there. It's fed by a gravity-fed tank, which is 2.5 meters off the ground here. And there it is, routine. You see the mechanic there, gives a little signal right in front of the driver. Turner fires it up, no wheel spin. Of course, that is a penalty. And here we see our LMP2 leader in, Brian.
Bill Binney has stepped out of the Lola Zytek, and right now Alan Timpany will get in. They ran together before. They actually ran together last year. This is a Lola Zytek, as I said. Bill Binney has won the P2 championship back in 2004 with Clint Field, who runs Intersport Racing in the ALMS series, and also with Rick Sutherland. So right now, they've got a great lead, 7 laps, but as you guys know, anything can happen. We've still got a long way to go, and Calvin, I heard you say it many hours ago. P2 seems to be survival of the fittest. Right now, these are not the fastest guys on track by any stretch of the imagination. I've seen 3 cars that are several seconds a lap faster over the last half hour. But what these guys keep doing is running. They've not had any problems. Adrian Fernandez, one of the fastest cars on the racetrack just moments ago, but they are well back in the order. So right now, Bill Binney Motorsports having a good day, just out putting in laps, trying to find their way towards 24 hours. But we just talked about survival of the fittest. Seems like Alan Timpany having a hard time firing up this Zytek power plant. Finally gets it up and going. They're going to have him be very careful with the clutch when they leave here. Once again, no wheel spin means you got to drag these clutches, and clutches can be an issue, guys.
Well, very important, Brian, as you well know, that the cars have to fire up under their own power. You can't push start or jump start. And here we see the 24 car, Liz Halliday, behind the wheel. It's had some kind of moment here. She's signaling to the marshals she needs some assist. She finished 4th here last year, and she's very comfortable in these LMP2 chassis. Had so much success with Clint Field over in the American Le Mans series. Recently made the move to the GT1 class with Team Modena. did a couple of events with them, and then they had some politics within the team with Les, so she felt she had to move on and found this ride for Le Mans.
I wonder what happened there, because obviously the engine is running. Perhaps it was just slick enough that she just needed some help getting pushed back, but the car, under its own power, see if she's able to get it back up to speed.
Sure whether this is coming into Arnage.
Looks like.
Yeah, so it looks like she may have had a quick spin coming out of Indianapolis, the previous corner. Just got it onto the grass there and needed some assist. So looks like she got away with one.
Yeah, the team obviously a bit concerned at this stage. Meanwhile, let's get down to Andrew Marriott.
Yes, in the UK, we have a series for teenagers who can race little saloon cars when they're 15. And one of the stars of that series about 6 years ago was a young man called Stuart Hall. Stuart, this is a very long way from T-cars and Brands Hatch.
Yes, it's totally different, but you know, it's a realisation of a dream at the moment.
Now, you've been racing in Formula 3 last year, and now you've switched to sports car racing, and this is your first Le Mans. You're having a ball.
Yeah, no, it's been great so far. We just hope we can keep it up. You know, it's my first one. I haven't been to sleep yet, so.
You haven't been to sleep?
No, I'm feeling a bit tired, so I might have a little bit of a kip now. But no, I'm just really enjoying myself, and the adrenaline keeps on pumping, so that's why I haven't slept.
What about this Pescarolo? It's a fine car, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, it's a fantastic bit of kit. It's a bit different to what I've used to been driving, but you know, the roll centre team helped me adapt really well, and I'm really enjoying myself.
And of course, you're with two very experienced men in Joe Barbosa and Martin Short, and they must have taught you a lot of tricks about Le Mans.
Yeah, you know, I couldn't really have two better teammates at Le Mans. You know, Joe and Martin, you know, give me lots and lots of advice, you know, and get me through the weekend, really.
We're having a great weekend. Thanks very much for that. And incidentally, Stuart's father, Peter, who's an old mate of mine, owned a bit of Team Lotus in its final day. So there's a bit of Formula 1 history here as well.
All right, thanks very much, Andrew. And yes, indeed, Kip is nap, Kit is car, and Liz is in. And she's made it around. This is an interesting deal for this team because they've had a lot of success here at Le Mans in GT2 Porsches. This is a big step running a P2 prototype, and obviously nice to have Liz on board with a fair amount of experience.
It really is. I mean, I think she brings a lot to the table with her experience in this category. And here we see one of the Pescarolos in as well. So looks like routine. And I believe that's Collard behind the wheel of the 16 machine.
Indeed, and is going to remain on board. So we're going to take a break as well, and we're going to take you through the top three in each of the four classes running here at the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. Coming up on 8 hours, 45 minutes remaining when we come back. At the Circuit de la Sarthe, there has been a huge development in GT2, the leader at the time by 3 laps. Jamie Melo, the Risi Competizione Ferrari, is not only in pit lane, they have wheeled it into the garage, and they have it now well up in the air on the jacks. Brian, what do you know?
Well, Jamie had a 2-lap lead when this problem developed. What I found out from the team was that he spun somewhere on the racetrack, obviously made contact with something, but he felt like he spun on someone else's oil. But after that spin, the radiator feels like he may have holed it. The water temperature started going up, so the team has brought the car into the garage. You can see it's up on jack stands. They've got a whole front clip here, under tray and front bumper that they'll put on, but they got to take a look at these radiators to make sure that there's not a problem there. Much like the Porsches, the 997 GT3 RSRs, the radiators on this Ferrari are out in front, and they're in a very precarious place. As you see, front bumper coming off and some rocks in there. The radiators just on either side behind those screens, so they're very vulnerable and susceptible. I can see some damage on the left side. Some of the screens pushed in, so once again, these rocks, if you get one in the radiator, it'll hold it. The other thing is, if you hit it and you catch the front end of the car and it peels it down, it'll bend some of those radiator fittings, and all you have to do is crack one of the hose couplings, and you've lost all that fluid, you've overheated the motor. If they can get this car back on track, that will be good, but the problem is, how hot did it get? We'll have to wait and find out. Andrew?
I'm hoping to get a quick word with Liz Halliday. The car has just had a big spell check. Liz, can you tell me quickly what happened in that incident?
Well, I went into the second chicane, and I lost the car and I hung on to it, but I thought maybe it was oil, and then it just snapped on me in Indianapolis, so we're just trying to figure out.
Okay, I'm being pushed away because the car is going to come out of the garage there, but you heard from Liz what happened there.
Well, interesting that both Liz and Jamie thinking there may have been some oil somewhere, and obviously if they're getting the car back out that fast, Calvin, you've got to believe they couldn't find anything with the car, so maybe there is something out there that is causing some problems.
Certainly looks that way, mate, and you know, I think it's very smart by this team to do a quick check on the car, maybe lose half a lap, possibly a lap, but just to make sure there's nothing that's going to cause further problems for Liz when she gets back on course. She was taken unaware by that situation, and you know, sometimes people think, oh yeah, I spun on oil, that's an excuse, but when you got this many cars running on a racetrack, certainly things like this can happen. So meanwhile, we're hearing from Brian Till down in the Ferrari pit, those radiators are going to have to be replaced on that lead Ferrari, so their lead is going to be eroded pretty quickly here by the other Ferrari, the 87 machine that currently runs in second by Andrew Kirkaldy, the Courier Cost machine. They came so close to victory here last year, had a little bit of drama late in the going that cost them a chance of victory that was eventually taken by that Panos, which is one of the cars you see there now going around Liz as she gradually gets back up to speed.
And while we were following that, the folks at Interface, who were providing the host coverage here, gave us a quick shot. It looked like the number 16 Pescarolo, which had been, and we may have jinxed it talking about it, it had a great run, fairly trouble-free. It looked like it was going up on the jack and being spun into the garage, so we'll try and follow up on that as well. The car 4th overall, the only one that's running in front of one of the diesels at this point. And right now, look at I mean, mid-engine car, because that guy is right in the bay, if you will, working on that right now.
See those bins coming out. I'd imagine they're going to be dumping some pretty hot water there on the deck in a short while. You see the new radiators wrapped in the plastic there, the protective covering. So that's the key with these endurance events, is to be prepared. And as Dr. Ullrich says, expect the unexpected. And this is unexpected. The Pescarolo's some kind of drama there at the back end of the car. See the rear wing coming off, probably going into the drivetrain or rear corner situation, I would believe. Oh, wow. There's damage that they're going to be fixing on Collard. We'd seen him make a pit stop just a short while before that. Got loose, got into the other car, and then smacked the guardrail pretty good. So that's damage they're fixing. That's not a mechanical issue.
Was that in the same area? Liz said that she thought there was oil, and maybe he got into that.
That's quite possible. We've heard 3 stories, or heard 2 stories, and seen another car have some problems there on the racetrack. So there's something going on. Such a shame for this team, because they had a great run here. It's really been flawless. They'd made the same amount of pit stops as the leader, so everything looked like they were on the same schedule. And one thing that has been equalized with that 10% reduction in the diesel fuel for the Audis and the Peugeots is that they all stop about the same mark, which is 12, 13 laps, whether it's diesel or gasoline.
Andrew?
I'm down at the 16 car, and there are now about 8 Pescarolo mechanics feverishly working on the rear end of this. And absolutely right, there's damaged rear suspension, and this job is going to take a little while, I have to tell you that. Emanuele Collard continues to sit in the car, and we may get a word with him later, but we're being pushed around a little bit down here, actually, because it's a very feverish activity indeed. Don't see any major components. Seem to be around the gearbox area they're working at the moment, but when I've had a better look and haven't been shoved around too much by the Pescarolo people, I'll give you another update.
All right, and Brian Till, I understand you found Jamie Melo.
Yeah, Greg, Jamie Melo just climbed out of the Ferrari while they continue to work on it. Jamie, we're getting reports from all up and down pit road, a lot of oil on track. Is that what caught you out?
Yeah, unfortunately I got some oil on the muslin braking point, and I couldn't do anything. I just braked and went straight to hit the Marriott. But anyway, I think we can fix it.
The guys are talking about fixing it. The car has been so good. You lose a lap or 2, you feel like you're still in it?
For sure. I think we can fix it, and we can recover it.
Well, Jamie Melo, Mika Salo, they have been flying. They're going to get to work on this car and get back on track, guys.
Ces images,
The number 1 Audi.
The Pescarolo has been pulled back onto the pit road. There wasn't any broken suspension. They just want to check it all. I think they've been a bit lucky here. And a new set of tyres going all very frenetic, as I said before. But Emanuele Collard's got a huge history and tremendously good at sports car racing. Has won a lot of races in the Le Mans Endurance Series for Pescarolo. Of course, the champion of that series from last year, Emanuele Collard, is just about to drive away. So I would say this was a close escape down to Pescarolo.
All right, Andrew, the Pescarolo away, but the number 1 Audi, they pulled the nose off of that car, and look at that. Is a foreign object, I would think. Well, they'd leave it in. I'm not sure what that was, but required a nose change of some sort. I don't know if it was a result of that or if this was more aero work. Brian, any ideas?
It was a huge chunk of concrete about the size of a softball that was up on the suspension. No idea how it got there. There are marks on this car showing the signs of battle that is done so far. A new nose, and he's down and away, but Biela obviously got together with something or got off the track. A huge piece of concrete.
All right, thanks, Brian. And we have a look now at the number 12 Courage competition, AER LC70. That has had some problems at the left rear corner. Tire flailing away, chewing away at the bodywork on that car right now. It's down the order a bit, 25th overall. Alexander Frey behind the wheel. That car has had a tough day already and certainly has now gone from bad to worse.
So Adrian Fernandez go around him there on the pit lane entry. And there you see this massive piece of concrete. Can we go down to Brian?
Guys, Dr. Ullrich was just looking at it. I was asking him if he felt like it came out of some of that apex curbing, that track out curbing that they had put out there. Dr. Ullrich, any idea where that piece of concrete came from?
No idea, no idea. But it's big as a fist, and it crashed into the car. And we saw raising temperatures on the intercooler. And then we checked from the front, and then they could see it.
Massive piece. And like I said, guys, we don't know if it's from that new curbing or not, but it doesn't really matter. It was in there, and it has had its damage done.
Well, Dr. Ullrich said in the press conference, expect the unexpected. I don't think even Audi can really plan for something like this. That's a massive piece of rock there. Hopefully it hasn't damaged any suspension arms there or any electronic wires that really feed and make these high-tech machines work.
Yeah, projectiles.
Whew, that's massive.
That's unbelievable, as is the damage to this tire, and you can see the bodywork just absolutely chewed apart. So the number 12 going to get spun around, backed into the garage, and they'll get after it and try and get that car back out yet again. We'll take this opportunity to take a quick pause. About 8.5 hours remaining here in Le Mans. Hours and 30 minutes remaining in this 75th running of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. Welcome back, everybody. Greg Creamer, Calvin Fish, Brian Till, Andrew Marriott bringing the action to you from this legendary event. And the sun slowly creeping into the sky. Fairly low, though, in the eyes of drivers and announcers alike at times here. And we've had some problems for the number 99 Reese Krohn Ferrari. Brian?
Colin Brown behind the wheel right now, Greg, and this is a problem that existed earlier. One of the drivers took it off track. No one will admit to who did it, imagine that, but obviously one of them took it off track. The exhausts have been loose for quite a while, but they finally gotten to the point where they're pulling down, they're rubbing on that under tray. The other thing that they'll do is they hang down like that, they'll begin to exert pressure on the exhaust and on the header system that comes out of the engine. You can't have that, so they're going to have to fix those. They're safety wiring them back up to the mounts, and they'll get Colin back on track, but this is going to be a lengthy repair. Nick Janssen had been flying in this car before he brought it in several laps ago and changed with Colin. Greg?
All right, thanks very much, Brian. And obviously a bit of work yet to be done on that car. We'll hopefully see that back out and going fairly soon.
Well, it's one of the calls you have to make. It's frustrating when you're making progress and working your way through the field to suddenly stop and affect repairs when you think, well, you could keep going, but, you know, you may spend 5 minutes in the pits possibly fixing that right now, and it could save you 30 minutes later on. So that's where the experience really shows with the team.
As you can see, the sun coming up, and that means usually that those grandstands, which are a bit empty at certain points here, will start to fill up fairly soon. As we're closing in, we're now 245 laps complete.
There's so much to see and do around this circuit. I mean, when we go backwards and forwards from the TV compound to the booth, we actually have to go around a part of the racetrack, and there's just thousands of people all over the map just trying to fight our way through to get to the TV booth, and so many great corners to go and watch from. You don't want to just be sitting in the grandstands all day, but certainly at the finish, those will be packed.
Yeah, they haven't left the track. They've just left the grandstands, and we've been documenting some of the problems that have been going on. Adrian Fernandez, everything looked so promising when he first came here, and super quick, but problems. Andrew?
Adrian Fernandez, you came here to learn, Adrian. You must have learned all sorts of different things about Le Mans.
It's been a fantastic experience, and you know, the car has been running well. Unfortunately, we have had some mechanical problems, and we've been able to solve them as they have come. And you know, we keep running, and we'll see. I mean, it's a long race. I can see the last few hours is going to be a lot of attrition, so you just have to keep going, and sometimes you think your day is over, and then suddenly you find yourself up again there. So it's like everybody has some problems except maybe the Audis.
And what about the circuit? It's an awesome track, isn't it?
Unbelievable. I mean, I had the opportunity to drive into the night and drive in the morning with the sunset and the sun coming, and it was beautiful. This track is fantastic. These conditions at what is it, 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning, it's there's a lot of grip, but it's quite tricky, and it caught me out in one of the corners as it caught Michel Barge. So you think there is grip, and suddenly it cuts you out. It's so cold. I can feel my feet so cold on the straight.
I have to ask you, still talking to Michel Barge after that incident early on?
Yeah, I don't know what was he doing. he has to learn that he has to go behind.
He does. But what about the whole Le Mans experience, the town square on Friday night and everything?
The whole event is fantastic, the whole week, and we have learned a lot, and you know, I'm going to try to come here for a long time. I have to thank everybody at Lowe's to give me the opportunity to come here in Le Mans and try our experience, and hopefully we can give them the result they deserve. And I want to say hi to my wife and my daughter Valentina, which is 1 month and a half.
Now, I spoke to Robert Clark at Sebring, and he says it is fully our intention to come to Le Mans in 2008.
Well, that's what we're working, and that's why we're coming here to learn and to see what it's all about the event. It's logistics and everything, and for me to get experience driving, and you know, I pretty much I feel comfortable now. Obviously, you learn, you keep learning, but the whole thing has been fantastic, and I think next year if we come with Acura, and our team will be a lot better prepared.
You're going to be here.
We'll be here. It's fantastic.
There you heard it. We'll be here, he said.
Well, I'll tell you, this is very special for Adrian, too, because one of his heroes was Pedro Rodriguez, and to be back at this tremendous venue where Pedro had such success means a lot.
Yes, it does. Pedro, of course, won here, and the last Mexican driver to run at this track was Thomas Lopez back in '91 in the '97 car. Hopefully he's getting a little bit closer to having that repair affected. I believe Brian may be down there.
Elgard climbed out of the 008 Aston Martin. Rinaldo has climbed in. Remember, this is the Aston that sat on pole. It's only 2 laps down. Bushu back behind the wheel. He stalls it, leaving the pits. He gets it refired. He's rolling down pit lane. He's back on track. Remember how fast they were? This is your pole sitter. Both the car and the driver on track right now in the fastest time of the day.
They've been very fast here, Greg. They're currently in 4th in class, but they've been in the 351 range. So, you know, it's a good car. I mean, this is essentially a 3rd Pro Drive car run under the Labra competition banner. But some very good drivers in there. They're not quite at the pace of the 009 and 007, but I believe it's an equally quick car and some good drivers down there.
And Andrew, any information on the Liz Halliday entry?
Well, the car did go out, did 1 lap, came back and has gone inside the garage area again where they're still working furiously. So I think the team had thought that nothing had been bent in that incident, but now they're working on the back end, so more time being lost by Liz Halliday in the number 24 car. So, you know, this class, LMP2, it's the class that everyone tries to win, but nobody ever manages it hardly.
Well, I mean, it's a small car, it's a fragile car, and we were talking about this. If you run a normally aspirated engine in that class, it's a 3.4 liter, which means it's revving high, and if you're running a turbo, it's a 2 liter, which means it's boosted through the roof. They just have their problems. As the number 97 continues, it is now dropped to 4th in class. We'll keep you up to date on what's going on with Risi Competizione when we come back. Monday night on Speed, go to Inside Nextel Cup. Dave Despain hosts while Waltrip, Schrader, and Biff will give you the real story about Sunday's race. Inside Nextel Cup, Monday night, 8 Eastern, only on Speed. You know, we've talked about studies and perseverance, but these three may be defining it. They are parked and they are watching.
Well, I'm sure they're having a great time. It's early hours here, of course, though, so I'm sure those young lads are tired and they've probably been up partying, having a bit of fun around the racetrack. And speaking of fun, I think Justin Bell was out and about last night, Greg.
Well, he was indeed. There are certainly adventures we've been documenting on the track, but Justin, who won here in '98 in GT1, has discovered, as our intrepid sleuth, that there's fun and adventures to be had off track as well.
What we thought would be a good idea would be to take you away, as the viewer at home, from the corporate world of the paddock and the pits at Le Mans, and come to what people really come to Le Mans for, which is a bloody good time. So we came up into what's called the Village, and I want to introduce you to some of the finest people from all over the world. For example, these guys over here.
This is my colleague.
Anyone? That's lovely. Okay, now I'll ignore you for a while. I'll come to you.
I'd ignore him if I was.
What's your favourite car here? Who you?
Peugeot.
Anyway, ignore him. And where are you staying? That's green in French.
I know. He's staying in a little tent.
Yes, little tent.
He is staying in a very little tent on his own.
As you can tell, it makes me very proud to be English.
Are you English?
Am I English? All right, we're leaving you lot. We're going over here. Next lot. We'll head over.
You're proud to be English. We were actually embarrassed.
You're embarrassed to be English. Well, I know. So what are you supporting while you're here? Which team?
Well, we're actually supporting the Champagne tent at the moment.
I've got a cord just hit my microphone.
That was a very good shot.
It was a very good shot. And where are you staying? In a tent?
Yeah, very much in a tent. In a very, very small tent. Claustrophobic with a best friend of mine. Nothing's going on.
And is it one of the ones with the water running through the mud and everything?
Yeah, there's water, sweat and mud.
It's revolting. And he caught the cord. Well done. That's a lovely hat. Now, obviously, you are sadly British, right? I went, right, no swear, that's a beat. So far, I haven't seen anyone that can talk straight. All right, is anyone not English? Oh, sure! Everybody's drunk in English. I can't find anyone that isn't. It's making me really proud. It's got hit in the head. Ow! It's married to one of our friends. Anyway, that's a lovely interview, and I think that we've done it here, actually. That's really good. Anyway,
that's not right. It's not right.
He's going to be covered in welts.
That was hilarious.
They've given up.
Hilarious.
They watched the piece and went, all right, that's where we need to be.
Justin is definitely a chip off the old block.
Oh, isn't he?
Man.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Great fun,
Justin.
and great to have him as part of the team here this year, and enjoying things as well. So that was great. Well, let's see here. Just a little bit of an update in terms of position. The number 97 Ferrari, that car still in the garage, so that's taking a very long time to change. And it is the number 87 Écurie Ecosse, the Scottish team, leading the class now, 212 laps complete, and the number 97 stuck at 207 laps. So 5 laps they have fallen behind, and as a matter of fact, the number 99 Brown-driven Ferrari is coming up on them. Let's take a look at our Valvoline race recap at this point. It's currently Audi 1-2 overall. Peugeot is 3-4 overall after the problems for the Pescarolo. 15 cars out of the race, 39 remain. Now, the record is 30 finishers, so at this stage, we're well ahead of that record, but we also have over 8 hours yet to go, and you know, cars getting more tired, used, pressured, and the like. So things are happening. Meanwhile, let's get down to Brian Till.
Well, Allan McNish just climbed out of the number 2, the leading Audi. And Allan, you didn't play well as a child. You didn't share toys, did you? You were in there for what, 4 stints?
It's my wife been telling you things. Yeah, no, that was part of our strategy, though, was to try at specific times through the race just to stretch things, partly to give the other guys a bit of a rest as well. And it worked out pretty well. The balance of the car was perfect. It's not very often you get that, but it was really, really nice to drive. And just allowed me to sort of get on there and push as well quite hard.
I was going to say, the other thing was the lap times were spectacular. Once you're in the car and you get in a groove like that, do you even want to get out if the car is that good? You fall into a groove and you're just putting those lap times in?
Being 100% honest with you, just at the end of my second stint, I was thinking, what could be better than driving at night with this car in this condition, leading Le Mans 24 hours? And I racked my brains for most of the Mulsanne, and I couldn't think of anything.
Well, the pace between you and the Peugeot, are you a little bit surprised with that? They were so quick in qualifying, but you guys seem to have outpaced them considerably in race trim.
I don't know if I outpaced them considerably, but if you look at our performance, I would have said it's very, very constant so far. If you look at their performance, it does fluctuate up and down by 2-3 seconds. I'm not really sure whether that's just them looking at the race picture as a whole and playing their own game, or what the situation is. But certainly, I think they're closer than what maybe people imagine right now in terms of outright pace.
Now, Calvin Fish says that you won't pay for anything, but what would you pay to keep it dry for the rest of the day?
Can I just say one thing? Calvin Fish has never paid for anything in his life, so I don't know what he's talking about me for. He comes from Norfolk, for goodness sakes. You know what they say about those people. They're worse than the Scots. At this moment in time, I'm just thinking about getting the car, watching every lap from now to whenever I have to get back in, and not taking anything for granted.
It's been a good year for Scotland. Dario won at Indianapolis. You could win here, that'd make it even better.
That would be a big party at Christmas, wouldn't it?
I want to go to that party, guys.
You'd have to buy a drink.
Imagine that. Yeah. A wee Scot living in Monaco, so he doesn't have to pay any taxes. Gives me grief about Norfolk.
Well, you know, talking about the consistency, I mean, obviously he had turned a lap. McNish did that 3:27.1, which was a blinder, but throughout that stint, the quad stints, he's been throwing down mid-328s fairly regularly, and so obviously he's absolutely right. That car just cruising along, and I loved his answer about what could be better. I racked my brain for most of the Mulsanne, and nothing could be better than driving here at Le Mans in this car and leading. Showing you the standings in our 4 classes here as we are closing in on 8 hours remaining here at the 75th running of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. Wednesday on Unique Whips, Pam Anderson is known for getting things fired up, but now it's Will's crew's turn to get Pam's engine started with an all-star ride. It's a huge episode of Unique Whips, Wednesday at 10 Eastern, and only on Speed. The fans starting to come back to the wall and get ready to watch some of the action on track here. And we have certainly had some. We've had action in the pits as well. And most recently, the car that had assumed the lead in the GT2 category, the Akira Yakos Ferrari, is in. Oh, but we get a report. Here it is, the 007, Johnny Herbert in the Aston Martin has gone into the garage, Calvin.
Wow, this is a disaster for these boys. I mean, they've been having such a great run. Johnny Herbert chasing down his other teammate, Darren Turner, in the 009, but so often at Le Mans, we've seen these Astons struggle to get through the final few hours. Is it hitting them early this year?
The number 35 Saulnier Racing entry also looks like a longish pit stop. Meanwhile, let's get down to Brian Till with a very fast young Brit.
Greg, Andrew Kirkaldy just stepped out of the number 87, and Andrew, you and I were just sitting here talking. A lot of people thought that the Pirellis would be fast in qualifying, but come race time, they would fall off the pace. That is obviously not the case at all.
No, the Pirellis have done it. You know, Pirelli have done a really good job lately developing the tires, and we've been pretty confident from the test day they would have the race pace. Maybe it wasn't the best at the start of the race, but now we got onto a softer tire, the grips come up in the circuit. Yeah, we're there, pretty happy.
The track, I know several hours ago, with a lot of oil on it, we had several cars off in one lap. In fact, that's what took the leading GT2 car off. Any problems for you guys with track conditions?
Yeah, I had a bit of a skip across the gravel twice on the same lap. Everyone else seemed to crash, but fortunately I managed to avoid hitting anything, so I was quite lucky.
Congratulations, you're doing a great job. Hold on to it for 24 hours.
Yeah, he made his name really in the British GT series and was just virtually unstoppable there, and obviously got recognized and was brought on by this team, which had contested and started in the British GT series, and they sort of moved up together into FIA GT and have continued, obviously, to be an extremely potent combination.
Great young talent, and we talked about the pace there with Brian and the tires. They've run a 4:05.3, and the fastest lap that I can find on the screen in the race so far is a 4:05.2 by the 97 car, so they're right on the money there. Pirelli's doing a tremendous job. Andrew very happy with the proceedings here. Here we're looking at the lead Aston Martin. That's the 009, currently driven by Darren Turner. The pressure is off him right now. He had Johnny Herbert breathing down his neck a few moments ago. But the 007 is in the garage area right now. We'll try and get some kind of report on what is exactly wrong with one of the Astons. But these cars always so fast here. And of course, with the problems for Herbert, we should see the 63 machine, the Corvette, the sole Corvette, factory Corvette that is in the running, assumes second place in GT1 here shortly.
Co-drivers in this include David Brabham, and obviously we talked earlier about Brabs wanting to put the Le Mans 24-hour into the accomplishment book as well. Let's get back down to Andrew.
I'm in the 007 garage, and the James Bond car has obviously had an off. It's done a lot of grass tracking, and you can probably see it there on our pictures. They have changed the front splitter. You see that? There's a splitter that's just come off. It does not appear to be damaged to me, but I think this is possibly... Oh, yes, it is damaged at one end now. I can see that. So a new splitter going on here, so that's the reason it's in the garage. It's had a big moment, and I think it was Peter Cox at the wheel. And now it is going to go out again, probably. This will take another 2 or 3 minutes just while they fit this splitter.
All right, our report from M.
And Andrew said it's Peter Cox. I think there's been a driver change, Andrew, whilst the car was in the garage, because when it came into pit lane, it was Johnny Herbert behind the wheel. So Peter Cox, who's always very fast. But meanwhile, the boys from Corvette on the rebound here. Brian.
Calvin, how many times have we seen it? They run second, third, maybe even fourth or fifth, but they claw their way back up, and that's exactly what's happening right now. The problems for the 007 is going to move the 63 up. They will be running in second place. 007 still in the garage. Johnny O'Connell has gotten out. Ron Fellows has gotten in. We've talked about, will this be Ron Fellows' last Le Mans? No mystery that he's not particularly wild about the endurance events anymore, and who can blame him staying up all night? But goodness, we looked at this Corvette, and who wouldn't want to drive it throughout most of the night? Fellows, what a storied career he has back on track here at Le Mans. Is it the last time? We'll find out.
And if it is to win it, how special would that be? Let's get back down to Andrew.
Yeah, I just want to clear up that confusion, totally of my own making, actually. I was unsighted to see the driver helmet, but it is definitely Johnny Herbert, that helmet that did so many different Grand Prix. Well, it was well over 100, it was 150 or so Grand Prix. It is Johnny Herbert who sits at the wheel of the Aston, so he hasn't got out of the car, and this team ready to push the car back onto a pit lane now.
Quick fix there, obviously, so that's the good news. And Johnny Herbert, I'm now looking at the timing screen, he had laid down a 3:48.9, which is way faster than the pole time, and about 3/4 of a second faster than the 009. Thomas Enger, I believe, had set that time during the middle of the night. So Johnny Herbert was really on a charge, and it doesn't take Johnny long to get up to speed in a car that he is relatively unfamiliar with. They did a 30-hour test at Ricard, so all of the boys got some seat time there. But there's nothing like race conditions at Le Mans to really find your feet, and Johnny is certainly up to speed, and great to see him back in a race car. He's really had a pretty quiet couple of years here, so it's good to see him back.
Well, you talked about the fact that it's a type of car that he's certainly unfamiliar with. When we chatted with them at the Aston Martin press conference, we were talking, and I said, I asked him, I said, what was the draw? What was the connection? And he said, well, obviously, he said, Aston Martin, you know, to drive for that mark is very special. But he said, it's a challenge. It's something I've never done, is drive a very high horsepower front engine car at Le Mans, something like this. And he said it was all about the challenge. And boy, has he adapted, isn't it? I mean, no surprise, just immensely talented, especially if you watched him last year in the D-Type Jag in the vintage race, just pitching it around. Spectacular stuff.
That was really great stuff. 009, that is Darren Turner, the lead car in GT1, rolls down pit lane. Brian.
Darren Turner rolling towards his pit stop right now. Ricard Rydell will take over. A lot of people thought Ricard may be the weak link in this chain, but he's done his part, and he's done it well. Brabham out of the car. Rydell climbing in. Darren Turner obviously very, very quick. Brabham as well. We know how quick David Brabham is, but Ricard Rydell, as I said, has done his part. This car now leading. Will be tires, fuel, and a driver change. I don't see a lot of marks on this car. It means they've kept it clean, they've kept their nose clean, they've done their job and kept up the pace. You were talking about how fast Herbert was flying. We've seen it before. It doesn't really matter how fast you go during the Le Mans 24 hours. It matters if you're there in the end. And right now, the 009 is Ricard Rydell. His stop complete. He's underway.
Well, Ricard, a former British touring car champion, very accomplished driver, but again, this type of equipment, a little bit unfamiliar to him, perhaps when he got involved with it, but when you're good, and it shows. And speaking of which, Johnny Herbert and the 007 being wheeled back out on the dollies. It'll be dropped down, they'll be removed, and they'll complete the action. Yeah, you can see a little bit of scrub there on the left rear corner.
Yeah, that one is definitely not unmarked, and Johnny Herbert has such a stellar record here at Le Mans. Of course, he got that unbelievable victory overall in '91 with the Mazda team. In the last 3 years, he's finished second overall. So great to see Johnny back. He'd love to get to that top step of the podium again. Andrew.
Yeah, just to catch up on Rydell, he was one of the first people to drive the Ferrari, of course, that ProDrive ran, and he was with the team for quite a while, and then they dropped him, and now they've picked him up again. But I think Rydell is a pretty fine racing driver still, as the other Aston just accelerates away, and you saw there was damage to the rear as well. They changed the front splitter. There was also some damage to the left rear, which was pretty cosmetic.
Thanks very much, Andrew. And Herbert blends it back on, heading into the Dunlop chicane, as we are now inside 8 hours remaining here in the 75th running of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. Glad you're with us. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Certainly incredible moments on the track, but I'll tell you what, on the Friday, when it is open, the pit lane and the paddock is open to spectators, no action on the track, the crowd immense, and that has become a huge draw as Mike West pulls out the guitar, cranks the amp up, and does the U.S. anthem, and just absolutely a stellar moment. Really a gifted man on the guitar, as well as a tremendous mechanic, and seemed fitting to show you that as the number 63 Corvette is now moved into second, and maybe marching its way back to the front once again.
Some great images of Le Mans all week long, and but I don't think he's got anything on you, Greg, when it comes to the air guitar.
No.
You've got some moves, man.
But you can stand on the air amp. That is very impressive. So as you can see, we've got lots of activity unfolding here. As I said now, It is the fellows now in the Corvette, just to clarify that, has split the two factory Aston Martins, at least for the time being. We'll see what happens, and sits second in GT1. Now let's take you back and show you some of the highlights from hour 16, because after a very quiet night and morning, we actually had some things develop. And here we go. First of all, there's the number 24, Liz Halliday, having a problem in the car. Now remember, there were reports of oil all over the place. The 97 had a problem, contact and a radiator damage. Spent a lot of time, took a long time to fix it. The number 16, Pescarolo, 4th overall at the time, the only car to be able to get up and mix it with the diesels. Contact, also concerns about oil on the track. There was damage there. That was Collard behind the wheel. And then the number 12 entry, one of the garage competition cars, Jonathan Cochet, problems. And then the car that was second in the GT1 category, Johnny Herbert, problems as well with some contact and a fix on that car, the undertrade damage, and they've taken care of it. And now Frank Biela has brought the number 1 Audi into the pits, and right now just refueling and waiting.
Currently 3 laps down on the sister machine driven by Dindo Capello, the number 2 car. So I'm sure at some point Dr. Ullrich will start to give some team orders, whether they just hold station. Meanwhile, the Peugeots are certainly up the pace. We talked about the fact there's always some inter-team rivalry. We've seen Sarrazin run some very fast laps during the early morning hours, but Bourdais has really got the hammer down now. He's down in the mid-27, so only half a second off of the fastest Audi time during this race. And once again, the mechanics checking out underneath that front there. Frankie may be feeling something. We had that huge rock recall when last time this car pitted. They found that massive rock underneath the nose there, so they're probably just checking everything out, make sure nothing is damaged. Better safe than sorry. Frankie's back underway, so fresh set of Michelins. So we can assume that Frank Biela will now do another double stint, do a quadruple in total for this run. And Allan McNish talked about it. This was the strategy coming in. By doing quadruples, that gives the third guy a little bit longer break. And here we look at one of the Peugeots, currently driven by Nick Manassian, running in 3rd spot. He's 4 laps down on Frank Biela, and he is 7 laps down on the leader right now. But the Peugeots have certainly shown some speed now in these early morning hours. And maybe it was a reversal of strategy. Everyone thought they'd go out, Greg, and run fast at the beginning, then just see if they could hold on. Maybe they were trying to ease back in the early going, get towards those last few hours that we're now inside our 8 hours, and then show the speed of this car. We're certainly seeing that in the hands of Bourdais, running mid-27s, 327s, that is.
Well, as we've been watching the Peugeot, we have some viewer mail that'd like to get in. This is from Paul in Bradenton, Florida. He asks, will we ever see the Peugeot compete in the American Le Mans Series, even if just as a one-off at Sebring, as Bentley did a few years back? What do you think?
I think that's certainly potential. I mean, there's nothing like Sebring. It's so rough there, and if you want to really prove the durability and reliability of a race car, Sebring is the place to go. Peugeot wanted to go to Sebring and do some testing immediately after the 12 hours, but they had some delays in getting this car ready, so they aborted that plan and did more of their testing over in Europe. But it wouldn't surprise me to see them at least test at Sebring. And looking at one of the Audis here, not only did they win in the 12 hours of Sebring, they took a day off on Sunday, and then on Monday morning as I was leaving the racetrack, they were out there for a further 12 hours, just putting the mileage on that car. So the Audis did a 12-hour race, they did another 12 hours, so effectively they did 24 hours of Sebring this year.
Well, we were off napping, and Lee Diffie was at the helm. They did an interview with Scott Atherton, and they chatted a little bit about that. And Atherton said they are working very hard to get Peugeot to make that commitment. And Andrew, you've got even more?
I think the problem here is that Peugeot don't sell their cars anymore in the United States. I think they stopped selling the cars there some 20 years ago, I suppose. I mean, I remember seeing, particularly up in the New England area, lots of Peugeot 505 estate cars. I used to see quite a lot of them up there. And Peugeots were quite popular in America for a while. They are, of course, one of the biggest car manufacturers in Europe. And the majority of the cars they sell here in Europe are now diesel-powered, and those passenger cars. In fact, in 2006, for the first time ever, talking all manufacturers, more diesel cars were sold than petrol cars or gasoline cars. Well, that's something to contemplate. So I think the problem is that Peugeot don't market in the US, and of course they are competing all the time in the European Le Mans series, and obviously that gives them some track time as well. So I think it's a little unlikely they'll come to Sebring. Love to see it, of course, and Scott Atherton also is a very persuasive man, so maybe he can just twist their arm.
Well, that would be absolutely great to have them over there. Let's move on with some other emails. John Taylor out of Indianapolis says, pardon me, but I'm new to the Le Mans race. Why is the Indianapolis corner named after Indianapolis? And it's because of the banking is the reason over there. It's one of the only corners here that has a distinct and significant banking to it, and it's to the left, as is the corners at Indianapolis, and it's 90 degrees. So when they started naming corners here at this track, they decided that they should honor that great race in the States. So there you have the answer there. Jeff from Okeechobee, Florida says, I've heard about the carnival atmosphere at the race, and if you were just watching, you saw Justin Bell get pummeled in the carnival atmosphere. He asked, are there any good areas to view the race during the overnight hours? Indeed, there are plenty of them. I would think that my favorite is probably if you walk around the outside, turn 1, turn 2, just past the Dunlop Bridge. It's an elevation change. It falls away. You can see 3-4 corners all the way through the S's, almost to Terre Rouge, and that's where the carnival used to be. It is now a very good viewing area.
That's a great spot. Of course, we typically go over to Indianapolis. There's that fast right-hand corner right before Indy, what really doesn't have a name, but one of the most spectacular corners on the racetrack. There's such a great rhythm as the cars come through there. They run through there at tremendous speed, just enough time to get over, transition over to the right, get on the brakes, and get it slowed down for Indy.
Well, if you want to ask a question, log on to speedtv.com, keyword Le Mans. That'll take you to the Le Mans page where you can click on a link to send your question, as well as links to all the feature stories and news from Le Mans. We'll get to more viewer emails when we come back to Le Mans. Thursday, Payback has a whole new season of custom rides and superstars. Because when you make it to the top, you've got to say thank you in a big way. Payback, Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Speed. One of the legends here at Le Mans, certainly Jackie Ickx, 6 wins coming in 1969, and then you could see the run that he had, and it was absolutely tremendous. Jackie, known as one of the bravest of the brave, in fact, quit racing Formula One because he said the cars were getting too easy to drive. He liked the challenge, but he felt there was acceptable risk, but he also felt there was foolish risk. And at his first visit to Le Mans in 1969, he made a very solid point, and Lee Diffie picks up the story.
In 1969, Jackie Ickx raced in the 24 Hours of Le Mans for the first time. Ickx was opposed to the traditional Le Mans start, which he considered to be dangerous, and he slowly walked across the track to his machine instead of running. He locked his safety belt carefully and thus was the last to start the race, chasing the field. On lap 1, a tragic event proved Ickx right. Private driver John Wolfe crashed into a barrier just past White House Bend and was thrown from the car, suffering fatal injuries. He had not taken the time to belt himself in. The Ford GT40 that Ickx drove with Jackie Oliver appeared at the time to be an obsolete car, outperformed not only by the new Porsche 917, but also by the older Porsche 908 and others. The 917, however, proved unreliable. Not one finished. The last 4 hours of the race turned into an unforgettable duel between the Ickx-Oliver GT40 and the Porsche 908 driven by Hans Hermann and Gerard Larousse. In the last hour, they continuously leapfrogged each other. The Porsche faster on the straights due to less aerodynamic drag, but slower entering the turns due to worn brake pads. Ickx won the race by the smallest of margins ever, despite having started last. He also won his case for safety, as in 1970, all drivers could start the race sitting in their cars with the belts tightened properly.
Well, as David Hobbs is not here, I suppose I'm the most senior member around these parts, and I actually saw all those races are mentioned in that piece, and particularly Le Mans starts were very interesting. You may not believe this, but there was absolute hush. And when the people started running across the road, you could actually hear their feet going. And then, of course, as the cars roared away, there was a great cheer from the crowd. But the best story I have about it is not something I saw, because I was even too young for that, but it's something I read in a Mike Hawthorne book. Remember Mike Hawthorne, great Ferrari driver. Apparently at one Le Mans, Sterling Moss and Mike Hawthorne were both great friends, and they were standing next to each other in a line to run across the road. Sterling Moss literally jumped the start and started running, and apparently Hawthorne shouted at him, "You deletive expletive, Moss," and apparently Moss collapsed in laughter and couldn't get into the car quickly enough, and Mike Hawthorne in the D-type roared away. So those Le Mans starts were absolutely wonderful, but I have to tell you, Jackie Ickx was definitely right.
Well, certainly in those days they were mates as well as fierce competitors, and I could just see that happening with Sterling. Ooh, we've got somebody who's that looks like, is that Arnage, the exit of Arnage?
Yes, is that the Fernandez car? Looks like the color's tough to
Certainly
tell
does.
in this shadow.
That is Arnage.
Possibly the 33 car.
Course
Currently
marshals
driven
out
by
there.
Kurosawa.
I have to tell you, obviously, if people know my histories and my hobbies a little bit, they know I love corner working, or course marshalling as it's called in Europe. And tell you what, American corner workers absolutely love the idea of coming here and watching this, because they're on the track, they're chasing race cars, and you don't get a chance to do that a lot in the United States anymore. Sometimes to the point maybe of being a little questionable here. That is the 33, got it absolutely right. And they've got that car back and underway. Let's get back down to Andrew.
Yeah, just want to say about that, you know, there are a lot of British marshals here, and the ACO are very happy to accept foreign marshals. I'm not quite sure how it's all organised, Greg, but obviously you've done a lot of corner working yourself, but I think some really experienced American marshals, corner workers, call them what you will, if they came over here, could probably get the job. I did a piece many years ago down on the Mulsanne Strait with a guy that was a detective sergeant in the police when he wasn't marshalling, and he was a British guy that had come over here. So lots of international interest amongst the corner workers here.
And there certainly are, as we watch the 33 heading back with some substantial damage to the front of that car. Kurosawa behind the wheel. A number of friends of mine, American marshals, have come over here and done the work, and it's great because what they do is they put them on a station with a British English-speaking chef de poste or corner captain, and so they get that, and the calls are French, French, French. When it gets to that corner, it's translated to English and then back to French. So a number of my friends have told me about it, and believe me, I will continue to come in this role as long as I can, but should I not have the opportunity to come in this role, I would love to come over here and work this event as a corner worker one day. It's pretty special.
Kind of ironic, we talk about the safety and the changes that Jackie Ickx was involved in with the starts, but I mean, Greg, I mean, you've been out there on the corners. These guys over here just seem so brave. I mean, yesterday when we were off the air, we saw some oil dry being brushed into the racetrack in the middle of the straightaway, going down to the Porsche curves with a local yellow, and you know, the drivers don't want to slow down much. They were flying by them at about 150 mile an hour, and there's a guy in the middle of the road with a broom.
Well, and you get the one guy that goes out with the yellow right in front of the car, wherever it is. I mean, that's certainly, it's great for the oncoming traffic to see exactly where that car is, but it's a bit dicey. Meanwhile, Kurosawa has brought it in, and Andrew, substantial damage to the front of that car. It looks like it might be going into the garage.
Yes, I'm just looking at the front here. I'm looking at the front A-arms to see if they're bent. They're definitely not bent. It's bodywork damage on both sides. The fenders both come off separately. Trying to get the one off the left-hand side. The one on the right-hand, oh, there's definitely suspension, broken suspension parts. The steering arm has gone. So this car is going to be pushed back in the garage in just a moment. This is going to take them another 15 or 20 minutes to fix this. So Kurosawa, unfortunately, has thrown it off the track, and yet more dramas for the 33 car.
Thanks, Andrew. And the number 7 Peugeot Manassian, a very quick stop. Fuel and tires, it appeared maybe just fuel. As you see that car heading back out on track, certainly did not do a driver's change, and it wasn't stationary very long, Calvin.
No, it wasn't, and those guys are down in the 27s as well. So all 4 diesel-powered cars have now run laps in the 327. I mean, it was McNish who threw down the gauntlet, a 327-1 just before he finished his stint this morning, which was very impressive, a quadruple stint. And meanwhile, Dindo Capello, his teammate, he's looking for his 3rd victory here. Both his previous wins came with Tom Christensen, one with the Bentley and one with the Japanese Team Go entry, and you can see that the Audi boys are just trying to make up tenths of a second anywhere they can, and that pit lane entry is certainly a spot they can do it.
Capello brings it in, hits the marks exactly. They do have tires ready. He'll be staying on board. you've been talking, Cal, about they've been double stinting tires and trying to keep the driver in the car for a double stint, if you will, on those tires. Looks like that's the plan again.
This is the first stint that Dindo's been out there as McNish, who he took over from. They're just waiting on the fuel. 81 litres. It's his birthday today, 43 years old, and Brian asked him what sort of birthday gift would this be to win his third Le Mans, and he said, I don't even want to think about it. That'd be something special. But good job, Dindo. He is such a pleasant man and such a great driver and just a great fit. He and Allan McNish just get along famously, and whenever you put Christensen in the car, as you've seen, he's had so many different teammates. He just kind of gels everything together.
By the way, I think I said Manassian in the 7 car. It's Marc Genet at this point. There was, in fact, a driver change, so we caught just part of it here. The number 2 car has won Le Mans 4 times, in 37, in 66, 78, 88. Will it be 07? We'll be back, taking you to the finish, and hopefully find out. Welcome back to Speed's live coverage of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. You take a look at the clock, you see we're just a tick or so over, 7.5 hours remaining in this event. Want to update you on class leaders, top 3 in each of the 4 classes. In P1, the 2 Audis continue to reign supreme. The number 2, 3 laps up on the teammates, and then another few laps in hand over the number 7, Manassian Genet Villeneuve Peugeot. In P2, it is the Binny Motorsports entry continuing to lead that category with Binny, Timpany, and Buncombe. It is in front of the number 32 Barazzi Epsilon entry of Barazzi, Vergers, and Auger. And then you can see the margin there, by the way, 10 laps. So Binny looking quite good here. Then the number 35 Saulnier Racing Courage AER of Nicolas Fillol and Bruce Joanny sitting 3rd. Now we move to the GT divisions. Leading in that is the 009 Aston Martin, Brabham, Rydell, and Turner, 63 Magnuson O'Connell Fellows, and Bouchou, Elgard Gallen. And then GT2, it is now the Kyriakos entry that's leading over the Porsche and the actually 2 Porsches, a 76 and 83. And let's get down to Andrew Marriott.
Yeah, I'm with Haruki Kurosawa here. Haruki, explain to us what just happened in that incident.
I had, maybe some oil or was under whatever. I couldn't stop in the car, so I touched the wall. So this car is a little bit broken.
Not too much damage, mainly bodywork. I did say that maybe the steering arm was broken, but it wasn't. It was just bodywork.
It's just bodywork.
Haruki, another question. In the past here at Le Mans, we've seen many big Japanese manufacturers. Obviously, Mazda won. We've seen Nissan. We've obviously seen Toyota with big efforts here. Do you think the Japanese manufacturers will come back one day to Le Mans? It's such a famous race in Japan.
Yes, I think so, yes. So I ready to go now.
Who might it be? Is Nissan the most likely?
I don't know, because I don't know. I have no idea, so I'm sorry.
But you hope that they will come back?
I think, yes, I hope.
That's Haruki-san, and obviously, I think you just lost it, actually.
All right, Andrew, thanks very much. I'll tell you what, that car has been so fast but somewhat fickle. It just has had a lot of little problems, and then this a bit of contact here. Hopping on board with the Audi as it's whistling along the track. Here is the Peugeot as it comes out of Indianapolis into Arnage, the spot on the track where the 33 had its problems. And I was wondering, when we had that spate of problems, and even still, Calvin, the sun's fairly low in the sky, which means you can get a lot of glare right in the driver's eyes, and sometimes something you might notice on the track when the sun is at a higher angle is just really invisible to you at this stage.
It's really tough with the shadows and everything, and even looking into Arnage when he was stuck in the tires there, it's tough for us to identify the car. So the same thing for the drivers going through that corner. If there is any oil, or he mentions maybe some sand on the racetrack, it's tough to see until you're actually into the corner. So very tough conditions, but that is what Le Mans is all about, and I think that the 33's journey through this race really typifies what LMP2 is all about in terms of a few off-course excursions, some problems with the race car, trying to fix them, trying to just keep that car going so that they see the checkered flag this afternoon.
There's a shot of the Noel Del Bello team garage. Liz Halliday, one of the drivers on that car, and that is still behind the wall. And now that we're out from the trees, we're going to hop on board once again with the Audi and just enjoy a little of the visuals here. And we're just going to ride with it. Obviously, sorry to say, we can't really tell you to turn it up too much because you're just going to get hiss But this is absolutely spectacular. We're going to just go for the ride, at least as far as we can, maybe up into the Mulsanne hairpin at the end of the legendary straight, broken up now by the 2 chicanes. There's the Dunlop Ridge. There's that sun we were talking about, Calvin.
Yes, it is, and this is the #1 car. This is Frankie Biela. He's really laying down some very fast laps here. He was down in the 3:27 range, which is what we're talking about. We've seen the 2 Peugeots hit that mark here in the last hour or so, and McNish did it a couple of hours ago. Meanwhile, Capello, the lead car, has dropped the pace off just a little bit. There's a healthy 3-lap lead over Frank Biela, the car that we're looking at right now. We're on board with. So Capello wouldn't be pushing it. He's going to just take that little bit of extra care in traffic, and those are all the things you can have during these last few hours, just that little margin. When you're pushing hard, you're going to take a few more risks. And there you see the speed difference between an LMP1 car and a GT2 car, which is the Krone Racing machine, which is currently out there on course, and they're having a great run here today, currently driven by young Colin Brown. He, of course, has that great deal with Roush Fenway Racing, going to be running ARCA, a couple of races this year and a full program, moving over to the NASCAR ranks. So great to see young Colin here. We'll be seeing a lot more of him on speed this year with the Grand Am Championship.
Out of the second chicane now, here is the famous Mulsanne kink. And picture that flat out after 2 miles of running and just turning in. And back in the era of the 917s at about 240 miles an hour, over the hump, and now into the Mulsanne hairpin.
That little kink there when you're doing a lot. Remember, the speeds are up around there, about 210 now, just close to 205 to 210 miles an hour on the approach there. But back in the old days with no chicanes, they were hitting 251 miles an hour was the record. So imagine that, and low downforce. Oh, my goodness.
Dindo Capello, a problem for the overall lead. Audi into the tires. And Dindo out of the car. Indicative of a very significant hit and damage if he's not even going to try and get the car moved. Oh, look at
believe it.
Look at the body language.
He cannot believe it, Greg. What drama here. The race-leading car.
By 3 laps.
We just talked about he had the margin. He didn't have to take risks. We don't know if we're going to get a replay here. Here we go. This is on the approach. Oh, the wheel's off. The wheel is already off, Greg.
That's through that very quick right-hander into Indianapolis, isn't it?
It is. That's the one we talked about, that tremendous corner. Dindo Capello cannot believe it. It's been a few laps since he made a pit stop, so it's not finger trouble, you would assume, in terms of the mechanics, not getting that wheel tight on the car, but we saw the wheel take off and Dindo spinning there in a cloud of smoke. Very fast part of the racetrack. The good thing is Dindo's okay, but what drama here from the lead Audi. This is the car that is shared by Tom Christensen, who's going for his 8th victory here, and that's Dr. Ullrich to the left of screen.
Ralph Yutner as well, and boy, not the birthday present that he wanted.
And suddenly we saw the reaction from the Peugeot camp as well. Dindo just shaking his head. He cannot believe this. Cannot believe this.
Brian?
I see Dindo out of the car. He's walked away from it. That's all well and good, but the rules state here at Le Mans,
Right.
if you step more than 10 meters away from the car, you're automatically excluded from competition. So I can't tell where Dindo stands right now, away from that #2 Audi, but if he's more than 10 meters away, his day could be done.
You're right, Brian. You were looking over those regulations on the way over here, and here we're seeing it. We're seeing it late. This is that right-hand kink, and Dindo is already spinning there, and there you see the wheel taking off. I mean, the front wheels are so big on this car compared to the rears, or, you know, it's not such a big difference. I can't tell if it's a front or a rear wheel off the car.
That wheel hit that tire barrier a ton, and there were either marshals or photographers right where that wheel hit as well. A big wake-up call for them.
Expect the unexpected. We keep saying it. Suddenly there's only one. They came in here with 3 bullets in their gun, and it's the left rear. So imagine that, going through that fast right-hand kink. I mean, the hub and the whole assembly there looks good, other than the wheel nut is obviously gone. You're not going to see it come into shot here when they cut away from this. There it is. Dindo spinning, and that is the left rear wheel we see following him into the tire barrier. Unbelievable.
Look at the height that wheel got when it hit. Fortunately, dropping back, and you can see those two bright yellow vests in the background.
And it'd been a two. I can't exactly recall. It's probably been within 5 laps that Dindo was in the pits, but he laid down a 3:31. So obviously the car was running pretty good. Now you see the mechanics hustling, but I don't know what they can do. I mean, they can get out there and, you know, any repair that has to be affected on the car has to be done with spares that are already there. There's no way that Dindo can put a wheel back on the car, and Brian is absolutely accurate in terms of the regulations saying if you step more than 10 meters away from the car, you are not allowed to participate in the event any further, so that stops you from going back to the paddock, getting some pieces and bringing them back to the race car. So now the battle is on. Peugeot realize that they are back in this game. They're currently running second and third, 4 laps behind the lead car, which is now this man, Frank Biela. The whole complexion of this race has just changed in a heartbeat. This is Michel Barge to the right. He's the head of Peugeot Sport, and they've got Dindo back in the car.
Look at the damage. That left front corner.
Well, the thing is, if they run a spool differential, he may be able to get drive. I'm not sure what setup they have on the Audi now. In the old days with the old 956 Porsche and everything, it was a spool where the rear axle is locked, so you're going to get drive. But unfortunately, if you have any kind of differential in there, which I think the Audi does, you're going to end up, you know, just spinning that outside wheel, and Dindo just cannot believe this. What can I do? We saw it with Rockenfeller, not whilst we were on the air, but he had that massive crash, and he's just trying to think of any way to get this car back to the pits. They realize, Dindo realizes this car is probably still healthy enough to get it back into the event, but how do I get this car back to the pit lane?
Host broadcaster providing all of the coverage, and obviously spending a lot of time focusing on the reaction by the crew in the Audi garage. That is Ullrich right there in the middle, and you can just see the frustration, and they're stunned.
They are stunned because, you know, sometimes you see a car go out and within a first couple of corners, a wheel flies off. The nut wasn't got on properly. Typically, it's where the wheel locates on the pegs and they tighten the wheel nut to it, and then it turns and loosens up the wheel nut. There's also a safety clip within the hub itself, which will stop the wheel nut typically from taking off. But heavy loads around this racetrack, of course, when you're running, you know, close to 210 miles an hour, a lot of very high-speed corners. And this is our new leader. Can Frankie Biela and Emanuele Pirro get their 5th victory at Le Mans, and their teammate Marco Werner, he's gone for 3 straight. But this is a whole new ball game. Audi versus Peugeot. Audi only has 1 car left. Wow.
Just amazing. And I mean, as you said, Audi started with 3, Peugeot with 2. Audi had the numbers. For much of the race, after Rockenfeller's crash, it was pretty even up. And now the numbers game falls the way of Peugeot in terms of entries. Speed, that we'll have to see. Brian?
Guys, I've been racking my brain trying to think if I've seen anything out of the ordinary on the pit stops, and it came to me, not the last stop, but the stop before last. The 2 car was up in the air. They did a tire change. When the left rear went on, they dropped the car. They didn't have it on yet, so they raised the car back up, put the wheel on, tightened it up, and it seemed benign enough at the time. My only thought is, could it have damaged something, one of the locking nuts there on that hub, that later, as it had gone on and had been used more, finally those locks gave way and allowed that nut to back off. But it's the only thing that I've seen out of the ordinary on an Audi stop all day long, so it's the only thing I can think of, and it just happened to be the left rear of the 2 car.
Well, that could explain why the locking system didn't work, Brian. Something may have been damaged there. They dropped the car down, the wheel would have gone askew on the hub and the thread there, and the whole locking mechanism. Essentially what you have is almost like a tube, but you slide the wheel over, and there's 2 little detents that push their way out once the nut is on and stop the nut from coming back off. It's hard to describe without a telestrator here or looking at the piece exactly, but there are safety devices incorporated into that hub assembly to stop the wheel. I mean, Dindo would have felt it coming loose, but that thing just departed. Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, in that very, very fast right-hander, I mean, he got away in a sense. I mean, obviously he still had the off and got into the tires, but and it's interesting, isn't it, Calvin, that they had increased the runoff in gravel in Indianapolis. It isn't visually a real obvious change, but they did deepen that up, and that very well may have been very beneficial here to Dindo. But boy, to lose that left rear, the loaded rear tire in that fast right-hander, ouch.
He's a lucky boy. I mean, it's obviously devastating to Audi right now, but the good news is Dindo didn't have a massive crash there. That could have been awful. But right now, Frank Biela is getting a different report on his radio as to what his race is all about here for the next 7 hours and 16 minutes.
One would imagine we're going to see a big, perhaps, strategy change now from the folks at Audi and a response from the folks at Peugeot. This race is far from decided. Welcome back, and we've got to take you right to our Valvoline race recap, and it is one of the more stunning moments that might be added to the history and lore of Le Mans. The leading number 2 Audi, which had led all but 3 laps of 262 laps completed, crashes when the left rear wheel comes off, and the number 1 Audi assumes the lead. And let's go back and, Calvin, have you take a good close look at what happened there.
Well, here we see the replay once again is going to come late here. We won't see the car come into effect through the fast right-hand sweep, but it's already happened. There it is, Dindo Capello spinning through that fast right-hander. This is Indianapolis corner that we're looking at. You can see the wheel there off to the left-hand side, careening into the tire barrier. So Dindo lost that left rear as he turned in there, and that is a very high-speed corner. We're now on board once again with Frank Biela, and the approach speed there is just shy of 200 miles an hour, about 196 miles an hour in that Audi. So think about that when you're behind the wheel.
Yeah, they say that, I mean, it's basically you come up to that, it's almost just to breathe, turn in, and then they get back on the throttle, actually, because the cars have so much stick nowadays, then the braking. And you wonder if it was maybe when he went back to throttle, if that didn't break it loose. And the number 87, which is now the lead car in the GT2 category, the Kurosawa Ferrari, in the hands now of Tim Mullins, heading your way, Brian.
Tim brings it to a stop. It looks like the mechanics are going to do some brake work here. You see him setting out a box with the tools. Not at all uncommon to see them do a brake pad change. The other thing I'm seeing out here, though, in addition to pads, is rotors. We have not seen that so far today, so it looks like a pad and rotor change for the number 87. Now, Mullen was leading, but only by 1 lap. And the other thing that was impressive, Patrick Long closing down at some 5 seconds that last lap. So Long is flying only 1 lap down. We saw the Ferrari with brake problems at Sebring. That's what brought about that great last turn, last lap battle at Sebring. So Ferrari's pretty tough on the brakes. And it looks like the 87 boys are going to have to do some brake work here as well. Guys?
Well, I think you called it, Brian. Pat Long just laid down the fastest lap of the race in the GT2 class, a 4:05.1, which is just only a couple of tenths faster than this car has turned. But these brakes, it's an expected, scheduled brake change here. They have the rotors out just in case. Once they get the wheel off, they'll then inspect. It's pretty easy if the pads are coming out to just slide on a new rotor at the same time. However, this is definitely a race that is going to go down to the wire. We saw it at Sebring, Ferrari versus Porsche, and we're going to see it again today. I believe that the Pat Long driven car, the number 76 IMSA performance car, has already done that brake change. I understand that the Porsches were looking at a window between hour 9 and hour 15, so if they had an opportunity before hour 15, they'd try and do it, but that window opened up early as well. So this is going to be a great battle here today between these two cars.
Speaking of battles, here comes the leader in the GT1 division. 7th overall, the 009 Aston Martin, Ricard Rydell brings that in. And looks like he's going to be staying on board. Looks like they're changing out the drinks bottle. And Biela in as well, your overall race leader. So 3 of the 4 class leaders in the pits. Brian?
Routine stop. Frankie Biela stays in the car. This car has some bodywork damage, some just behind the left rear. We saw that huge chunk of concrete come out of this car earlier, so hopefully the front end is okay as well. But right now it's only fuel. The Michelin engineers say, yep, the tires are good. So Biela will take on 81 liters of diesel and be back underway.
Wow, and the tension in that Audi camp just went up tenfold. They realize it's never over till it's over, but boy, their game plan just changed. And you see a lot of things going on during that pit stop. There's no servicing allowed on the car whilst the fuel is going in. That's why the tires can't be changed, but certain things can occur. You see that little windshield, it's an open cockpit car, that little lip in front of Frank Biela, that can be cleaned. You can also have the tire and brake technicians look and inspect the tires and the brakes. So they're allowed to look and inspect, but nothing can be changed. So those are the things that can occur whilst the fuel is going in.
This is the last stop that the number 2 car made. Now, keep on. We're just trying to find out where this might be. It's that left rear corner. Remember, we can't do anything until fueling's done. Dindo throws the bottle away. Everything is going absolutely to plan right now. When they pull that fuel nozzle out, that's when they can go to work, and nothing. They did not do tires on that stop.
That's right, he was on a double stint there. I thought that was the case in terms of that's the second run on that same set of tires. So just very, very unusual to have a, we would assume, a wheel nut failure that far into a stint, and that the safety mechanism didn't take care of it and just alert Dindo that he had a wheel coming loose. It had to be that sudden for him to be carrying that speed. He would have slowed way, way down with the lead that he had if he'd have thought there was anything awry in the left rear corner of that race car. The spin, as we know, was at very high speed. We have to assume that Dindo would have approached that corner thinking that nothing was wrong. And then as he turned in, go down a couple of gears there, then back on the power, as you said, Greg, and the acceleration to Indy, then down another gear as you turn into Indianapolis, but still very high speed, well in excess of 100 miles an hour through the apex of that right-hand sweeper, and the approach speed, as we said, close to 200 miles an hour.
If there had been some damage, not just not to the locking mechanism or the wheel nut, but to the locating pegs, the drive pegs, you'd think that would have put up some sort of vibration. You would have felt that at some point. And as you said, no indication that there was any problem until it occurred.
And we didn't see any real concern. You would have thought if one of the mechanics, when they're changing, would have seen something, they would have had someone else coming over and take a look and inspect it and think about whether, you know, do we need to, you know, do something here? Do we need to fix something? They don't take risks. They have the experience. You know, they can change a piece like that very quickly.
Now, this is 2 stops ago, Calvin, and they did do, I'm fairly sure, tires on this one. There's the left rear.
There it was. Yeah. There's the problem. There's the problem. Brian Till was right on the money there. That has to be when the problem occurred. So great job, Brian. Great eyes there on that previous stop. And I believe that was when McNish got out of the car and Dindo essentially got in for this stint. So that would have been when any damage would have occurred there on the left rear hub.
When it dropped down, you could see that tire absolutely torqued sideways for a minute.
Would have put stress on that hub assembly, and particularly it could have damaged the thread there, so that the wheel didn't have a good lock. You know, maybe they tightened it up and it wasn't all the way down, and then again the locking mechanism may have been damaged as well. This is all assumption, of course, but that's a great catch there by our tape crew in the truck to find that pit stop and see that problem.
They are good.
With the bee's knees make these shows. They cover for all our little faux pas, Greg.
Oh, and there's plenty of those, so they are indeed busy. So nicely done once again. So that again, the huge complexion change here. Capello and that Audi still shown second on the monitors, but of course just falling down the order. And it won't be long here before the number 7 Peugeot in another lap will officially take that second spot away. So for Biela and the rest of the gang in the number 1 car, Peugeot and Werner, the mission, I would think, has changed.
It certainly has, and I think for now, at least from one of these Peugeots, we're going to see exactly what they have. I mean, they have 2 cars, which will essentially assume second and third. Currently, they're third and fourth with the lead that Capello had. He still holds down second place right now, but obviously that is not going to hold as his car is out of this race. But Genet currently is driving the number 7, Lamy in the number 8. We've seen that both cars are capable of running 327s. Do they have any additional pace to try and chase down Frank Biela, who looks for his 5th victory here at Le Mans?
Well, here it is. Watch right there. You saw that wheel just get torqued sideways. The mechanic says problems, back up and on, but the damage done, and it was a couple of hours later when it would pay off in a bad way. Welcome back to Speed's live coverage of the 75th running of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. 7 hours remaining, and it was just before the 7-hour mark where the complexion of this race changed completely in terms of the overall win. And we'll be continuing to bring you up to speed on that. Greg Creamer, along with Calvin Fish here in the booth, Brian Till and Andrew Marriott down in pit lane, and our great world feed, the folks from Interface, giving us some shots from inside the garage. Do want to update you that before that whole incident happened with the Audi, we were talking about the lead GT2 Ferrari from Akira Koss coming in, making a stop with a pad change. Thought perhaps that Patrick Long in the number 76 IMSA Porsche, no relation to the IMSA series in the States, the car that actually was, or the team that had the pole here in GT2 last year, might assume that lead. They too made a stop, did a driver's change, and now Richard Lietz is behind the wheel of the number 76 Porsche. So they are still second. However, with the pad change that was done in the brake work on the 87 Ferrari, the margin is 36 seconds. So long series of rocket quick laps paid off, and they are now well within hunting distance of that Ferrari at this point.
On board with the leader here. This is Frank Biela again. Just look how busy it is. It's like highway traffic out there this morning, and the pressure is on. You got to keep the pace up, but you cannot take any unnecessary risks. We understand from Brian Till during the break that Emanuele Pirro made his way into the garage area, and Dr. Ullrich went over to him and spoke to him for several minutes, telling him the current situation, what he needs to do when he gets behind the wheel of this Audi.
And as we're enjoying the onboard here of Frank Biela in that lead Audi onto the front straight, completing another lap. And again, as fast as possible, but as careful as possible as the lone remaining Audi. We were told, and here you come, coming up on that big group of traffic. And as you see, no attempt to dive bomb, anything like that. A patient pause, lift of the throttle, swing to the outside, move on by, up through the S's and down out of the Dunlop Bridge. Now, we were talking about the developments in GT2. Pat Long brought the IMSA Porsche in, and he's now with Andrew.
Fabulous double stint there. He really put the Scuderia Koss Ferrari under pressure now.
Yeah, we're working hard to put this 430 under pressure. Those guys are running well, but we think we have something for them if we keep the pace up. Richard and Raymond, my teammates, are doing great, and I had a good time out there. We ran soft tires, double stinted the tires, and they ran really well. So Michelin's on top of their game. The temperatures are cool, so that's making it a little bit easier for the drivers and the tires. We'll see how it goes when the temperature grows.
Now, I dragged you from the back of the garage and you were putting eye drops in your eyes, but they don't look bloodshot. You look great.
No, not too bad. I haven't had a wink of sleep yet all night, so maybe I'll get a couple hours right now. But I recently had LASIK surgery, so I have to keep my eyes moist. It's great to have LASIK and not have to wear glasses in the car. It makes a big difference.
Patrick, this year at Le Mans, you're driving for a European team. You've already driven here for Porsche teams, but of course they've been American teams.
Yeah, it's quite different. You know, I was telling Justin earlier on that there's a little bit of a language confusion on the radios. Luckily, I can kind of translate for Richard when he's out there, and sometimes I jump on the radio, but they're doing a phenomenal job. Most of these guys don't work full-time on race cars, as well as Raymond, who's my teammate. They all come from up near Normandy and run a workshop, so to grow a team this quick, Raymond's only been driving for 3 years. It says a lot about how hard these guys have been working.
It's turning out to be a fabulous race in every class.
Yeah, it is. It's a great race. It's always good to be here in Le Mans.
Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, Pat Long speaks, what, like 20 languages or something? The guy is just amazing, not only in what he can do behind the wheel of the car, but just an incredibly smart, intelligent, multilingual guy, and that's paying off as we hop on board here with the Audi. We thought maybe we'd take you back and show you sort of the Audi saga. A lot of their success at Le Mans has come from races without much in terms of event happening. Well, this has been very eventful in the first huge wreck by Mike Rockenfeller.
Yeah, damp racetrack, Mike got caught out into Turd Rouge. His car was out of the event. Close call here for Marco Werner. makes a very bold move down to the inside. Magnussen didn't know he was there, but this is the big moment right here. Pit stop, car has dropped down before the wheel is on and tightened up. And we have to believe there was some damage done to that hub assembly that eventually sent Dindo Capello into this moment. There you see it, left rear wheel is departed from the number 2 Audi. The leader is out of this race.
And there's the reaction. You can see Dr. Ullrich is absolutely vehement right now. Well, at the time, that was real time, you know, watching the incident. And I think he maybe suspected we did it to ourselves when that wheel problem occurred, you think?
You have to think so. That would be why he's mad. He realizes he would have known. I mean, he has his eye on everything that happens down there. He would have seen that problem during the pit stop and said, you know, boys, you know, we made a mistake there. That has cost us the chance of victory with the number 2 car and has put everyone else back into this ball game here today. And what a shame for Tom Christensen. It seemed like he could do nothing wrong here coming into Le Mans last year, but his was the R10 that suffered problems last year, finishing 3rd, and the other one went on to victory, of course. Then he came to Sebring, similar problems there with his car having all the problems, and it seems like Tom maybe has lost some of his magic. He always seemed to be in the right car, and right now for the last 12 months or so, the tables have been turned on Tom Christensen.
And one thing very quickly, the number 1 car that is now leading, that contact with the Corvette, it looked like the Vet got the bodywork only. It didn't get that left rear tire, so that may be the good news in that event. We understand we will be able to talk to Dindo Capello. Obviously, there is a very serious debrief going on in the Audi camp right now, so Dindo just a tad busy. We'll get to him. But an interesting story as well is one of a gentleman who is pretty good at designing race cars and having a bit of fun behind the wheel. Andrew?
Yeah, probably the first interview that Adrian Newey's ever done with a crash helmet on because he's about to get in the car. You're having a fabulous no troubles run.
Yeah, no, we've just been trying to keep it smooth. We've had the odd little moment where both of us have been back by we're just trying to keep running.
But Adrian, obviously you raced here in the Le Mans Classic and had a big accident. Did you have to get that behind you?
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? Yeah, I'd rather not worry about that one.
How difficult was the choice? Indianapolis for the US Grand Prix or race here?
Well, one's a hobby, one's my profession. I can get away with not doing the odd race in Formula One, so this weekend's hobby rather than profession.
Are you in touch with Indianapolis, with DC and Mark Webber?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Are you in touch with the team in Indianapolis this weekend, or are you just concentrating on this race?
Well, I've been in contact with them all through the weekend and up until when the race started, but I've turned the phone off since then.
Very wise. Enjoying yourself?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, very much, yeah.
Have a good stint. Adrian Newey, one of the top racing car designers in the world.
He has designed some amazing machines. Mika Hakkinen has him to thank, I think, for a couple of world championships.
Some serious talent there. McLaren did not want to let him go. Remember when Bobby Rahal took over Jaguar? He was a very close friend of Adrian Newey, and it looked like he kind of got underneath Ron Dennis there and got Adrian to sign a contract, but it all turned once Ron Dennis realized he was losing his main man. But Adrian has gone on to join the Red Bull racing team, and I think he'll be turning things around there quickly.
And you're taking a look at the number 63 CompuWare Corvette. Ron Fellows continuing to circulate second in the GT2 or GT1 class, hoping to move up one spot in what might be his last Le Mans. More on that when we come back. Friday night under the lights, the Beast heads to the Milwaukee Mile in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. It's a heart-pounding, paint-trading, edge-of-your-seat thrill ride. The NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series live in Milwaukee Friday night at 8:30 Eastern, only on Speed. Here are the cars that are officially listed as out of race after 17 hours. The number 3 Audi from P1, the 21 Radical from P2, 53 Lamborghini, and the 64 Corvette from GT1, the 5 Lola and the 9 Creation out of P1, the 29 Dome Motor out of P2, the 71 Porsche from GT2. Got a few more, the 81 Panos, the 86 Spiker, and the 80 Porsche out of GT2, the 40 Lola then retired out of P2. And finally the 44 Pescarolo from P2, the Spiker, the other Spiker from GT2, the 13 Courage from P1, and the 20 Pilbeam from P2. Now you'll notice the number 2 is not there. That's because at this point it has not officially been listed as retired. Now, here's our race recap. The leader, number 2 Audi, again, led all but 3 laps, and then on the 262nd lap, had the wheel come off, crashed in the hands of Dindo Capello, who was on for the ride. The number 1 Audi went into the lead, and speaking of Dindo Capello, a disconsolate man is with Andrew, or with Brian, excuse me.
Greg, I have to be honest, I was thinking, Dindo, of the questions that I would ask you about your win at the end of this race. Any indication at all that the tire was loose?
An indication. Just my engineer, he asked me 10 seconds before the accident if everything was fine, and everything was fine. No vibration, nothing. And what's happened is just unbelievable because it's such high speed. I tell you, it was a scary moment for me because the first moment I saw that the car in front of me lost oil suddenly, but then, you know, the car went on one side and he fly. And when he landed, I was completely without brake. I could not stop anymore the car. And then I've seen that there was no wheel on the rear right. And then I understood what's happened.
And it had to be frustrating. Obviously, no way to repair the car. The damage didn't look significant, but no wheel nut, no wrench to put it back on with, even if you could have found the wheel.
No, the problem is that I would have tried to bring back the car, but because I went straight in the barrier, everything was destroyed in front, and the steering wheel was locked. I could not turn, and but it was very bad because, you know, when you dominate a race like that and you lose just 5 hours to go for something something which was unpredictable because you know, we had just to drive to the end. We were fast, but without taking any risk, and losing like that is really sad, I would say.
Do you remember on the stop when you got in from Allan, when the car went up in the air and then they lowered it too soon? The left rear wheel wasn't on yet. They had to raise it back up. Could it be indicative of that?
I got a picture. There was a photographer there. When the car was spinning, the wheel was already running away.
Any consolation at all that there is another Audi that leads?
The only consolation that I tell you, at that speed and the impact I had, I'm lucky to be here at the moment in one piece. And the first thing I thought when I felt that everything was fine, I thought probably I'm dreaming. It can't be. It's not true. It's not real. But it was.
Well, so sorry to see you out of the race, but it's great to see you in one piece, my friend. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Once again, I think one of these drivers is very fortunate to be driving the Audi. Obviously, it was a problem, but with that impact, these Audis are built so well.
They are so tough. They really are, and that's why they win so many races. Here we see the 14 car, the Dome Machine, with the Jan Lammers managed entry. I don't think there's Jan behind the wheel right now, but just getting back to the Audi situation. Yeah, they're tough, but I mean, you know, God, what a heartbreaker for Dindo. It is just unbelievable, unbelievable. I've never felt such emotion in one of these races that we've been attending, Greg, for the last 10 years or whatever. I mean, that's just devastating blow, and it's just hard to believe that it happened. As Dindo said, I mean, he's happy to be here. That's the consolation, but they were well on their way. They absolutely dominated this race. I don't think anyone expected it during the week, but come race time, they were on it.
Well, let's get down to Andrew, perhaps with some reaction from the Peugeot camp.
Yes, I'm with the head of Peugeot Sport, Michel Barge. Now there's 1 Audi and 2 Peugeots. You never could have expected this.
Yes, but it's difficult, you know, it's endurance. And we can have a lot of problem. Everyone can have a lot of problem. That's why I can't say anything.
Have you changed the strategy at all? Are you sticking to your original strategy?
We keep our strategy because, as you know, we were not very optimistic with the reliability of the car. So we fix speed for our pilots. And, well, now we are 2 and 3, and we will see.
Thank you very much. We will see.
Well, it's almost interesting, perhaps, Calvin, that maybe if they were being somewhat conservative in that fact that this was a learning year and they obviously didn't have the pace that they expected to have and were trying to figure out what to do with it, that may in the end pay off a little bit.
Yeah, but I think if victory comes their way, it will come in a very strange way because, you know, if you think about the two Audis that are out, it's really been mistakes by, we assume, we didn't see Mike Rockenfeller's crash. We just saw the aftermath of that. It was damned. We don't hear of any other car being involved, so we assume Mike made a mistake there, and we have to assume that the problem with Dindo's car was from the mistake made in the pit. Other than that, all three Audis have run like a train, like, you know, like clockwork all day long. So certainly Peugeot were in position. This is why you come here to learn, and they really believe that 2008 was going to be their year, but they will gladly accept a Le Mans win here today. Whoa, and look at that, sideways. They do have traction control on those diesel-powered cars, and that's one of the things that Peugeot are very confident about because they quit their rally program at the end of 2005, and the electronics are so high-tech with that World Rally Championship program, and they were bringing a lot of those people over in the initial development of this prototype chassis, and they thought that would really help them develop things such as traction control. But the one thing with traction control, when you've already got the pendulum effect of the car going sideways, there's a limit to what that TC can do. And here we see it again. I think we're going to see a little bit of a replay here. Look at that, really sideways. So these boys are pushing. They just ran a lap. That one was in traffic, but prior to that, they've taken about 6 or 7 seconds out of the lead of Frank Biela, so certainly got the hammer down.
Yes, I just wanted to add on that traction control because I did ask Audi about the traction control and if they thought that Peugeot had it. The explanation was that the Peugeots use the same Bosch system that Audi use, and that Audi were convinced that Peugeot were definitely running the traction control. Because if you remember, last year at Le Mans, the Audi team were having problems making the traction control actually work. And it's much more difficult to do that with a diesel engine. Obviously, you haven't got spark plugs and so on. But Audi feel that Peugeot have benefited from the work that Bosch did on that particular situation. So we're pretty sure they've got traction control and it's working as you described there, Calvin.
Yeah, I think they do, Andrew. I mean, I'm not sure what they call it on the Peugeot. It's called RSR on the Audi. And they've got separate Bosch technicians working with each camp, but you can't really unlearn what you already know. I mean, that information from Bosch that they learned through the Audi program is in-house, so you can't just say you have to ignore it and relearn it all again. You have that knowledge, and so Peugeot certainly have the benefits of joining a partner such as Bosch, who have already been involved with learning how to get traction control working on a diesel-powered machine.
Well, the old saying is a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that last shot of the 2 garage doors shut of the 3 in the Audi camp is a very telling visual indeed. And one of the things, talking about that Peugeot getting sideways, and you talked about the mass, we've heard the guys for the Audi with the R10, that 5.5-liter V12 engine, that's a big lump, as we call it, behind there with a lot of mass, a lot of weight. And Tom Christensen referred it gets to a point where it feels like it's going to fall off a cliff because the momentum swings. Well, the Peugeot's a 5.5-liter V12 too, so that's some pretty substantial weight and that's all part of the learning curve.
It really is. It's a massive engine, and I was looking at some literature again. These teams are so, and we're not trying to really keep anything from you at home, but these teams are so secretive when they have a new project. Gradually, over the course of 12 months, they'll start to open up and give us more information. But reading the literature, there's a comparison between when they last won here back in 1993, believing that the engine that year weighed about 150 kilos. This year, it weighs closer to 250. That's 100 kilos. That's a massive amount of weight. It's like 220 pounds heavier than the previous generation normally aspirated engine that they used here with their previous victory.
And the other thing about the Peugeot engine is they're saying similar horsepower, maybe a little bit more, but also a couple hundred more Newton meters of torque. So there's even more going on at the back of that Peugeot. And as we said, they're just trying to put the package together and figure it all out. Well, for the Audis, it has been an eventful day, and in particular for the number 2 Audi. Watch it here again. There it was. It drops. You can see it didn't locate. It's torqued sideways, perhaps the damage done there. They got it fixed, but Hour and 45 minutes thereabouts, 2 stints later, off it came. A big off by Dindo Capello. Fortunate that he is okay. Fortunate those marshals are okay. But for the team and the reaction by Dr. Ullrich, absolute stunned frustration. And they now have 1 car left, and Dindo beside himself, out of Le Mans. From 1923 to 2007, history rich is the streets and roads around Le Mans, and history may be in the making here as well. Let's get down as we have the #1 race-leading Audi in pit lane. Driver change, and while we were in break, Cal, we actually saw the host feed a intense conversation between Ralph Juttner and Emanuele Pirro, who's getting behind the wheel of that car, obviously just laying out some strategy and letting them know what they expect, what they need to have done.
Well, Pirro knows what he has to do. Yeah. I mean, he's won this race 4 times. He's had 8 consecutive podiums here at Le Mans. Quite a remarkable record. And you see there the mechanics really looking at the spindle there, and Brian Till is down there.
Yeah, Frankie Biela got out, Pirro got in, as you guys said, but the thing I'm noticing, extra time taken with these wheel nuts right now. The crew actually took rags, wiped the grease off from the fitting where the wheel slides up against to make sure that they've got a good connection. And a problem with the right rear. They went back to the right rear to retighten it, so really being cautious. I'm wondering if these guys think if they don't, or if they might not, I should say, have some type of a problem with the wheel nuts. So we still never got a conclusive answer on what the problem with Mike Rockenfeller's car was and what caused him to crash. We certainly know what the problem was with the #2 car. Team taking no chances with these wheel changes now.
I'll tell you, Brian, what I see down there right now is nerves. I mean, they're second guessing themselves a little bit with that pit stop. That wasn't routine with the car half coming down, and I think everyone is extremely nervous. They want to win again, of course. They're unbeaten since 2000 here, with their engines at least. We know the Bentley took the win in 2003, and you know, the prestige of win at Le Mans is huge, but when you have a rival such as we're looking at right now on screen with the Peugeot, I mean, this is huge, and Dr. Ullrich knows this. And here we're looking at a replay of the right rear. Looks like they realize there's no panic here, but there was still something went amiss here. See there, right there, there's some pins on the wheel hub that wheel has to locate on. And typically, I was watching a pit stop the other day in the morning warm-up, actually, and normally, and yeah, you see it, see the man on the front there is assuming that the right rear is tightened, so that's a mental error by that mechanic right there, because he's the only man on that side of the car with the wheel gun. There's only 2 guns allowed. You have 1 on each side, so, you know, you're getting tired here. You've been up for a long day, Brian.
Guys, the one thing I'm noticing, the crew with the wheels and tires really looking at that inside fitting of that wheel and tire, and they're making sure that they mate up, seeing if there's some type of a problem with how that wheel mates up with the hub.
Yeah, the mechanic who put that wheel on, I mean, he took a long glance even through the spokes of the wheel itself, didn't he?
He did, and looking at that wheel, it just went on top of that pile there. Was definitely like a groove that was appearing on the inside, like something was chafing the inside. They run such close tolerances within the wheel itself, with all of the brakes and the cooling and everything that's going on within there. But again, it was a human error that was possibly the problem there, where the mechanic went to the front. And the other day, what the Audi wheel nuts have is a way where on the rear wheel nut, when the gun goes on, there's a little detent that keeps the wheel nut inside the gun. and it's a way that they can really speed up their pit stops, and for some reason they did it the reverse way round, and the mechanic was on the right front thinking that all of the service was done. He's the only guy on that side of the car, so he has to realize I haven't tightened up the right rear wheel yet. So again, human error, but they caught that one. The car did not go down and potentially damaged that hub and spindle as well.
On board the number 7, second place overall in P1 Peugeot right now, Marc Genet, about 4 laps behind the number 1 Audi that is out front. We understand the number 8 Peugeot and Pedro Lamy is in pit lane, perhaps making a stop, just completing one, I believe, as we ride on board here. There it is. There's Lamy. He stayed on board and is coming out, and we have the number 93 Porsche, which has been one of the players, the Autolando Sport entry, just leaving Indianapolis, sitting 3rd in class, and has had a fairly comprehensive tire. It looks like the right front.
It is, and look at the damage and carnage that that creates now going through Arnage. So he's about halfway around this circuit. He'll have about 4 miles to get this car back to the pit lane, and this is where experience counts. You think, oh, I'm going so slow. You've been used to speeds in a GT2 car at least about 175, 180 miles an hour. When you suddenly slow down to about 50, it seems like you're crawling. But the key is to get it back safely without doing further damage, which will cost you precious time.
And there's Frank Biela, and Brian is with him.
Frank, you just stepped out of the number 1 car. Frank, it seems like the hopes of Audi rest on the number 1 car right now. Any concerns that you guys might have after seeing the problems on the 2 and a potential problem on the 3?
I mean, it's a long race and it's unpredictable, and we saw how quickly something can happen. So we have to be careful. Actually, when it happened to Dindo, they told me on the radio, don't go too much risk or too high risk. And I tried to slow down a bit, but also this is difficult, you know, because then you lose concentration somehow. So actually the last stint was the toughest one, even though I was not pushing 100%. But the car is okay, and everything sounds okay when you are in the car. So I hope that we will make the next 6 hours, and it looks very good at the moment, of course.
Have you had any conversations with the team about the problem on the 2 car, about the loose wheel?
No, they didn't tell me, and I think it's better, because if you know, you feel even worse, you know.
Well, best of luck.
Thank you.
Looking for number 5.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, they that group, or the pairing of Piero Biela, 4 wins, ties Pescarolo, and not to jinx them here, but they're entering even more hallowed ground and tying the legendary Derek Bell. Oh, traffic for Piero.
And I think Frank hit the nail on the head. When you try and back off, you get out of your rhythm. We've seen it so many times over the years. Recall Ayrton Senna, that race at Monaco where he was just dominating and suddenly eased off the pace, lost concentration, and clipped the barrier just by himself. So I think the key is, I think you need to stay in the rhythm of the race car, but in traffic is where you don't take any risks. Certainly if it was wet conditions, I mean, Dr. Ullrich mentioned earlier in the show, there is potential for rain about noon here today, which is in about 3.5 hours. You have to believe that Audi have, of anyone, the most accurate weather forecast here for the remaining 6.5 hours of this race, which we're close to. So there's potential for rain, and that's when the pressure will really be on those 3 drivers. They have the experience. They have 10 wins between them, between Werner, Pirro and Biela have 10 wins, so there's a lot of experience in that lead car. They need to put it to good use today.
Here's the Autolando Sport Porsche coming in with that damage to the right front, but I think far more compelling was the shot we had just before that of the number 1 Audi in the hands of Pirro, the number 7 Peugeot with Marc Genet behind the wheel, not that far back relative track distance, trying to take a lap back, doing anything they can. But let's get down to Andrew.
Yes, indeed, and the 93 car has just climbed, the driver's just climbed out of the 93 car. A lot of damage to the front of that car, and just trying to get around. It's going straight back in the garage, and well, black marks all down the side where the treader's been flapping. Just damaged some of the electrics, maybe the radiator. So I think they're going to have a lengthy stop here at the 93.
Lars-Erik Nielsen, the driver behind the wheel. Pierre Eretu, of course, we've witnessed race here at Le Mans, certainly a number of races in the American Le Mans Series over the years. And another of these young drivers who's been so impressive, Alan Simonson, has shown up in this car and has been very quick. So another young man perhaps starting to make a name for himself here at Circuit de la Sarthe.
He really has, and Has an excellent resume, actually. You know, won a lot of races over the years, and our mate Lee Diffie said he even saw him down running the V8 supercars in a few events last year. So really just getting across the board in terms of the experience that he's gaining at a very young age. He's 28, 2 older drivers with him. Nielsen's 56 and Pierrette. He came so close last year. He was the Porsche that the Panos got around late in the going. Eventually he finished second, so he's won the 24 Hours of Daytona. But right now, he's looking at his car, trying to get these repairs affected and get back in the ball game here today.
Fairly long fix here, obviously, as it gets into that body work. And once again, those if there is a flaw with these Porsches, it's that the location of those radiators up in the front corners, obviously damage if you get contact, but if you get a tire flailing, it can rip it apart as well. And we've been talking about the issues here with the locating pegs, the wheels, the nuts. Brian, I think you've got a little bit of a visual for us.
Yeah, Greg, this isn't off of an Audi. It's off of one of the Ferraris, but the wheel and the hub assembly really kind of works the same. This is the inside of the wheel. Now, the spindle on the car goes through here, and it's got locating pins in the back. But you can see that there's a bevel around here. That needs to mate up, and the locating pins need to get into these holes. Then on the front, the wheel nut looks like this. It's a single nut, and you can see that it's tapered. It fits in to the taper in here. All of that has to mate up perfectly. If it doesn't, or sometimes even if you get debris in here on that beveled edge, it gets scored and the wheel will back off. On the spindle itself, as it comes through and gets screwed on, there are actually little keeper pins that stick up. Once the nut goes on far enough, the little pin sticks up and it keeps the nut from coming off. Perhaps that was the problem with the Audi. Did those get damaged on that stop? We're not sure, but if they did, that would allow the nut to turn back off and the wheel to come off the car.
It's a great explanation, Brian. I think you're spot on there. We have to assume that that wheel, when it was cocked, when that dropped down on the ground, would have damaged something on the spindle. That's the only part there that Brian's unable to show you, but that would have been damaged, and that safety device possibly damaged at the same time.
Well, it certainly changed the entire complexion of this race from one dominated by Audi to an Audi still with room, but under pressure from Peugeot.